Hello, viewers, and welcome to the latest episode of The Huddle. I'm delighted to be joined by Grainne Hurst, Group Corporate Affairs Director at Entain. Grainne, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Yeah, no problem. Plenty to talk about, plenty to ask you about. To start off with, obviously we had the departure of Jette Nygaard-Andersen as CEO, and we've now got Stella David in place as interim. A lot going on with Entain, a lot of reports about potentially selling brands and things like that. I imagine it's busy for you in your role. How's life at the company in general?
Yeah, so it's been a hugely busy and eventful period, as I'm sure you've seen and can also imagine. Lots going on, a period of change. What I would say, though, is that with Stella David as our interim chief exec, we have a very credible, very effective, very likable individual steering the ship. She has been injecting a real sense of honesty and realism into the business, and is really committed to kind of getting back to what we call our brilliant basics. So I would say lots going on, but morale is very good at Entain, and really kind of doubling down on delivering on our core objectives, which are our organic growth. So, driving revenue in our key markets like the UK and Brazil, but also margin expansion and also making the most of the exciting opportunity in the US.
We had the Cheltenham Festival recently, so a far less challenging question, but an important one none the same. How was the festival, maybe for yourself personally, but I guess more importantly for Entain as an organisation?
Yeah, I would say Cheltenham was a tale of two halves. So the first couple of days were very punter friendly. Obviously some issues with the weather as well, but the second 2 days were a bit more bookmaker friendly. Quite interesting that over a third of our turnover from Cheltenham actually comes from Gold Cup Day, which is obviously the Friday, and a few of the favourites were beaten on Gold Cup Day, which has made it a solid Cheltenham for Ladbrokes and Coral. For me personally, loved it. I was only lucky enough to be there on the Wednesday, but Captain Guinness was a big win for me on the Wednesday and meant that I'm actually £6 up from my Cheltenham Festival. So I'm going to chalk that up as a win.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think the bookmakers in general, not just Entain, have a lot to thank El Fabiolo for in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, true. Always unfortunate when that happens, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, I had a trouble on that one, but I won't go too far into it. It's gone now. As we said, plenty going on in the organization. So probably a lot of incoming queries for you as corporate affairs director. What are kind of in your day-to-day role? What are the most pressing things for you right now?
Yeah, so I run a global team of 12, and my role as corporate affairs director covers a myriad of things, mainly public policy and public advocacy work, also our safer gambling strategy and our international regulatory affairs work. But given that the UK is the biggest part of our business and there is probably the most going on from a regulatory and advocacy and lobbying policy perspective, probably unsurprising that that is the thing that's top of my to-do list at the minute. We have had a number of consultations from both the Gambling Commission and DCMS, which we've been responding to and working through and obviously waiting for updates on. But there's also a load of voluntary initiatives that we as Entain are doing with the Betting and Gaming Council, our trade association, whether that be on things like setting up a voluntary ombudsman or trying to understand what a single view of the customer scheme might look like for our most vulnerable cohorts. And so there is a lot going on. Obviously, incoming new government soon to be on the cards in 2024, whatever shape and colour that might look like. So obviously preparing for that. So it's a busy time, but a really exciting one.
Definitely a few follow-up questions I'll have about the consultations and the white paper and things like that. But you mentioned that the Betting Gaming Council, obviously we were both at the AGM recently. I just wanted to ask your views on how the kind of Gambling Commission is interacting with operators at the moment, because from certainly what we saw at the AGM, what I've been saying to people is I see a lot of positivity there. I think Andrew Rhodes firm but fair, but certainly loads more engagement than a dark time when sort of for 2-3 years there was no engagement really.
Yeah, I would totally second that. So the operators and the Gambling Commission and the Betting and Gaming Council, and to some extent DCMS, have been working really closely since the Gambling Act review was launched on all of the various work streams. But there is, a markedly more positive relationship, I would say, with everybody involved there than, as you say, there was maybe a couple of years ago, which is really positive for everybody.
Yeah, as I say, a few more specific follow-ups I'll have on the UK market specifically. But I wanted to talk about, obviously, Entain recently reported its financial results, and an inevitable impact on that was, the fine, the big, I think it was 585 million, but that was to do with historical failings. And when Barry Gibson was on the Huddle, he spoke about, that was very much a historical thing, the need to move forward and do things correctly, responsible gaming at Entain. As corporate affairs director and kind of representing the company, what's the view on how the results came in, and also that I guess the message from Barry Gibson about moving forward and very much hopefully leaving that side of things in the past?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll probably deal with the HMRC element first, and then I can come on to the results. So really pleased, both personally in my role, but as a business, to be able to put that issue behind us now and draw a line under it. I think it gives us a real opportunity to focus on the business going forward, rather than having to keep talking about and dealing with historical legacy issues. So really pleased that we can do that. Also quite pleased with the way that the business has changed over the period in question. I was involved very heavily speaking to regulators during the period running up to that decision to highlight the extent to which the business has changed. Obviously, there are no individuals with the business now that were here during that time. We've gone through comprehensive reviews of our policies and procedures to make sure that there are no gaps in those, and we genuinely are a different business now to what we were then, from top to bottom, I would say. So really pleased that that is behind us. I think on the results last week, we delivered growth despite a challenging backdrop, I would say, which is a real testament to the robustness of the business. I think a couple of the figures that I would just draw attention to would be the group EBITDA of £1 billion, and also the fact that underlying profit was 399 million positive, which I think are the key stats to really reflect what the business is going to look like going forward. And really exciting opportunity, as I said at the start, in the US. So our US NGR was up 36% year on year, which again is really exciting given the scale of the opportunity in the US, and obviously shows some really strong growth there. So lots of opportunities. We're obviously getting back to the basics. Our strategy is working. We have some key focus areas which we're going to be delivering on, whether that is, as I said, our key markets like the UK and Brazil, looking at customer loyalty and retention and lifetime value, and obviously player protection, as well as, again, US opportunity. Really excited and proud, actually, to say that our US app was the fastest sports betting app in the industry, which, again, is super exciting and really encouraging for the business. And it's all underpinned, I would say, by three key things. The first is the amazing group of talented colleagues that we have across the globe that are working kind of day in, day out in different time zones delivering. But also we have said that we will be the only operator to operate in regulated or regulating markets. And we have said and continue to reiterate that we genuinely think that only a sustainable business will be a successful one in the short term, but also the medium and the long term.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, plenty of opportunity in the US and in Brazil, but I'm going to return to the UK because in the theme of sustainability and kind of back to basics as well, a lot of, as you said earlier, a lot of your day is to do with the change in the UK at the moment. Obviously, we had the slot limits, the online slot limits implemented recently, and a lot of discussion about affordability checks, and in fact, even whether we should call them affordability checks or vulnerability checks and things like that. You personally and your colleagues, have you spoken at kind of the consultations, and if so, what kind of discussions have you had?
Yeah, so we have. There have been a lot of them, as I said, but we've been engaging verbally with that, but also responding to the consultations in writing. I've also spoken at, and I know some of my team have spoken at various sessions which the Commission have run, and also some of the conferences on this topic. And the key message is really that we welcome the Gambling Act review, and we think it's, the right time to update the regulations for the new world that we live in. So fully supportive of that, but we need to make sure that all of the policies are proportionate, because what we don't want to be doing is driving people into the black market, which over-regulation and draconian regulation can very easily do. Now, affordability, as you mentioned, or vulnerability, is a key one. It's been widely debated in the horse racing industry and in the Racing Post, and obviously there was a recent debate in Parliament about it. But it is a genuine bugbear of customers. They do not want to provide their documents, whether that be pay slips, P60s, bank statements. And we know that 80% of them will outright refuse to do that, but they will definitely want to bet somewhere else because it's part of their leisure and entertainment. And so what will they do? They can't get on with the regulated and licensed sector, so they'll go to the unregulated sector, which have no checks and balances on player protection grounds, but also pay nothing back to the UK PLC. So our key message is that everything needs to be in proportion, and that we're willing to work with the Gambling Commission and DCMS to see how we can kind of find our path through that.
Mm-hmm. What should be a simple question is probably the most difficult of them all right now. What's next for you guys, especially from the operator point of view? So we had Kindred Sustainable Gambling Conference this week, and I spoke to a couple of people at the company, and on the Huddle they said at the moment it's very much a waiting game, waiting for kind of clarity from the DCMS, from the Commission. What's next, especially on the topic that you just mentioned, kind of the checks, with so many different opinions and sets of data? What is next? And I know you probably can't answer that in a one word.
Yeah, I wish I could. I think what's next, so Entain are in a positive position, I would say, if you look at the Gambling Act review, because we have voluntarily implemented many of the initiatives that are being discussed and consulted on. So whether it's the mandatory levy at 1%, we've voluntarily committed to doing that already. We've already agreed and actually actioned quite a few years ago, removing the logos of football shirt sponsorships, which I know is something that's under conversation at the minute. So we're well placed, I would say, to mitigate what's coming down the track from the Gambling Act review. In terms of the affordability debate, probably the best I can say is that there are active discussions with all of the interested parties at the minute, DCMS, the Gambling Commission, the operators, the trade associations, to understand how we can make a system work which protects a small number of customers that may be at risk of gambling-related harm, but doesn't cause a load of friction and irritation for the millions of customers that like to have a bet, on a daily or a weekly basis as part of their leisure and entertainment. And I'm hoping we can find a way through that. I think there is a realization and an acceptance now that actually we can't go back to what was originally drafted in, documenting people at very low limits, because that just won't work. And as I said earlier, we'll send people to the wrong place. So I'm confident that we will get to a point where we can work our way through it in a sensible manner. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully it's not too far away.
Sure. With everything going on, with everything that we've discussed and more, if you had one wish as the Group Corporate Affairs Director at Entain right now, what would it be?
Good question. I think we're never going to be able to keep everybody happy. There's always going to be people that like to have a bet. There's always going to be people who don't like the industry for whatever reason that is. But what I would like to see is probably two things: a broader recognition of the contribution that the industry makes, so to player protection, but also to UK PLC. And also, I would quite like the recreational customer's voice to be a bit louder and prouder in the debate. You know, it can be sometimes a little bit one-sided, and it's quite difficult to get the voices of the people like you and me who might like to have a bet out in there. So if I had a wish, it would be broader recognition of the customer and the contribution that the industry makes.
Sure. No, good answer. A final question from me. If we're to look ahead, because I always like to end on kind of question looking forward, including the UK, but maybe broader. And as you say, we've talked a lot about the UK, and you probably talk about it a lot on a daily basis. So maybe even you can look ahead to things outside of the UK. What are you kind of looking for the rest of the year with Entain?
Yeah, so continuing on our strategy, I would say, but things that are really exciting outside of the UK are Brazilian regulation. Obviously, that has been a long time in the making, and still isn't quite baked yet, but I think that's a really exciting opportunity for us. And again, from an Entain perspective, we are obviously on the hunt for a full-time chief executive. So fully supportive and behind Stella at the moment and everything she's delivering. But I think internally people are excited about who that might be and what their focus and vision might be, which I'm hoping we might see in 2024. And then just continuing to grow organically across Europe with all of our core markets, and also building on the great success in Latin America, the US, and Canada as well. So lots to do, lots to hope for, and lots of excitement, I would say, for this year.
Yeah. On the CEO note, similarly, we're very interested, and we'll be keeping a close eye on how that develops as well.
Yeah. You'll probably hear before I do.
Well, Grainne, thanks very much for your time. We covered a lot. What seems like a huge amount really in a short space of time, but I'm sure we'll speak again soon, and best of luck with everything during what is a busy time for you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thanks for watching.